Have you ever felt that mysterious peace that descends upon your home without explanation, even when everything around you seems to be falling apart? You're not alone in that experience, and what you're feeling might be far more real and powerful than you imagine. Saint Teresa of Ávila, doctor of the Church and one of the greatest mystics in Christian history, knew this reality intimately. In her book of her life, she writes with stunning clarity about the constant presence of angels in our daily lives, describing them not as distant celestial beings, but as active protectors who intervene in the most ordinary moments of our existence. Tonight, as you read these words, there might be invisible guardians around your home, watching over your family, protecting your peace, deflecting dangers you'll never even know about. But how can you recognize their presence? How can you know if your house is under this divine protection? Saint Teresa, who experienced countless angelic encounters throughout her life, left us a roadmap of signs, clear, unmistakable indicators that heaven has assigned special guardians to your dwelling place. Subscribe now to receive more teachings and advice from Saint Teresa that could transform your spiritual life. What you're about to discover isn't mere religious sentiment or wishful thinking. These are documented realities from the life of a woman who conversed with angels as naturally as she spoke with her sisters in the convent. In chapter 29 of her book of her life, Teresa describes with remarkable detail how angels appeared to her, not as apparitions or dreams, but as living presences that brought protection, guidance, and an inexplicable peace that the world cannot give or take away. Are you ready to open your spiritual eyes and recognize what might already be happening in your own home? Are you prepared to discover that the peace you sometimes feel, that sense of being watched over, that mysterious protection from dangers you never saw coming, might all be evidence of angelic guardianship that has been yours all along? Saint Teresa would tell you that the angels are waiting for you to notice them, not because they need recognition, but because your awareness of their presence deepens your connection to the divine protection that surrounds you every moment of every day. You know that feeling when you walk into your home after a difficult day, and suddenly, without any logical reason, a deep calm settles over your spirit. Not the temporary relief of being away from stress, but something deeper, a peace that seems to emanate from the very walls themselves, wrapping around you like an invisible embrace. Saint Teresa of Ávila experienced this phenomenon so frequently that she dedicated entire passages in her writings to understanding it. In chapter 20 of her book of her life, she describes how this supernatural peace would descend upon her cell in the convent, even during her darkest spiritual trials. This isn't the peace that comes from having your problems solved or your circumstances improved. This is what Teresa called peace in the storm, a tranquility that remains steady even when everything in your external world is chaotic. She understood that this peace was a direct gift from her guardian angels, a sign of their protective presence that transcended human understanding. When angels watch over a home, they don't just guard against external dangers. They infuse the atmosphere with the peace of heaven itself. Have you noticed that certain areas of your home feel different? Perhaps your bedroom at night, your kitchen in the early morning, or that corner where you like to pray or read. Saint Teresa would recognize these as sacred spaces where angelic presence is particularly strong. She wrote that angels have the ability to sanctify spaces simply by their presence, creating what she called oases of heaven in our earthly dwellings. These aren't random occurrences. They're deliberate acts of divine love, signs that your home has been marked for special protection. The next time you feel that unexplainable peace settling over your home, don't dismiss it as mere relaxation or psychological relief. According to Saint Teresa's documented experiences, you might be feeling the very breath of angels, the gentle touch of beings who love you with a love that mirrors God's own heart. This peace is their gift to you, their way of whispering, you are safe, you are watched over, you are deeply loved by heaven itself. Can you feel it now as you consider these words? That subtle shift in the atmosphere around you might be the first sign that your house is indeed under angelic protection. How many times have you narrowly avoided an accident, changed your plans at the last minute for no clear reason, or felt an inexplicable urge to take a different route home? These moments might feel like coincidence or intuition, but Saint Teresa of Ávila knew them as something far more profound. In chapter 31 of her book of her life, She recounts numerous occasions when she was mysteriously protected from physical and spiritual dangers through what she could only describe as angelic intervention. These weren't dramatic, visible rescues, but subtle redirections and protections that she recognized only in retrospect. Teresa understood that guardian angels work primarily through prevention rather than dramatic intervention. They whisper to your spirit, influence your decisions, create circumstances that steer you away from harm before you even realize danger was approaching. She wrote about times when she would suddenly feel compelled to delay a journey, only to later discover that the path she would have taken was blocked by bandits or treacherous weather. These weren't accidents of fate. They were the gentle but firm guidance of beings assigned by God to keep her safe. In your own home, this protection manifests in ways both subtle and profound. Perhaps you've noticed that certain potential dangers never seem to materialize. That loose step that should have caused a fall but somehow didn't. The electrical problem that could have been serious but was discovered just in time. The illness that seemed to skip your family when it affected everyone around you. Saint Teresa would tell you that these are not merely lucky breaks, but evidence of guardians who work tirelessly to shield your household from harm. The most beautiful aspect of this angelic protection, according to Teresa's writings, is its consistency. These guardians don't take breaks, don't have off days, don't decide you're not worth protecting when you're having a difficult season spiritually. Their love is as constant as God's love, because it flows directly from the divine heart. Write in the comments, Saint Teresa, help me recognize the protection I already have, and subscribe to our channel to continue receiving these life-changing insights. Have you ever been going about your ordinary day when suddenly, without any external prompt, you felt an overwhelming desire to pray? Not because something terrible happened, not because you remembered it was time for prayer, but because something deep within your spirit seemed to be calling you toward God. Saint Teresa of Ávila recognized these spontaneous spiritual impulses as clear signs of angelic presence. In chapter 23 of her Way of Perfection, she explains how angels have the unique ability to kindle holy desires in human hearts, creating what she called divine sparks that ignite our souls toward virtue and prayer. This isn't about religious obligation or guilt-driven devotion. Teresa experienced and wrote about a different kind of calling, a gentle but irresistible pull toward goodness that comes from beings who live constantly in the presence of God. When angels watch over your home, they don't just protect you from external harm. They actively encourage your spiritual growth, inspiring you toward acts of kindness, moments of gratitude, spontaneous prayers that seem to rise from your heart without conscious effort. You might notice this inspiration manifesting in various ways throughout your daily life. Perhaps you find yourself more patient with family members, more generous with neighbors, more inclined to forgive those who have hurt you. Maybe you discover that reading spiritual books or listening to sacred music brings you an unexplained joy, or that you're drawn to create a prayer corner in your home without really understanding why. According to Teresa's documented experiences, these aren't random mood shifts. They're the gentle influence of guardians who want to see you flourish spiritually. The most remarkable aspect of this angelic inspiration, as Teresa describes it, is how natural it feels. The angels don't force or manipulate. They simply make virtue more attractive, prayer more appealing, love more accessible. They work with your free will, never against it, creating opportunities for spiritual growth that feel like discoveries rather than obligations. When you feel that sudden urge to call a lonely relative, to help a struggling neighbor, or to spend a few quiet moments in gratitude, you might be experiencing the gentle nudge of beings who see your highest potential and lovingly guide you toward it. Have you ever found yourself gradually losing interest in activities, relationships, or entertainment that once seemed appealing, only to realize later how toxic they actually were for your peace of mind and spiritual well-being? This natural drift away from harmful influences is one of the most subtle yet powerful signs of angelic protection that Saint Teresa of Ávila documented throughout her spiritual journey. In her masterwork Interior Castle, particularly in the fourth mansion, she describes how guardian angels work to create what she called holy distance between souls and anything that might harm their relationship with God. This protection doesn't come through dramatic confrontations or forced separations. Instead, Teresa observed that angels work through a gradual shift in your desires and preferences. You might find yourself naturally losing interest in gossip, feeling uncomfortable in environments filled with negativity, or simply preferring the company of people who lift your spirit rather than drain it. She understood these changes not as personal growth alone, but as evidence of angelic guardians who were carefully steering her away from spiritual dangers before they could take root in her soul. In your own home and life, this might manifest as an inexplicable reluctance to invite certain people over, a growing discomfort with television shows or books that once entertained you but now leave you feeling empty, or a natural preference for conversations and activities that nourish rather than deplete your spirit. Teresa would recognize these shifts as signs that your guardian angels are actively working to create a spiritual environment where your soul can flourish rather than merely survive. What makes this form of protection so beautiful, according to Teresa's writings, is how it honors your freedom while guiding your choices. The angels don't force you to make better decisions. They simply make harmful things less appealing while making beneficial things more attractive. You begin to crave peace instead of drama, truth instead of flattery, genuine connection instead of superficial entertainment. This isn't restriction, it's liberation. The freedom that comes when your desires align with your highest good, guided by beings who see the eternal consequences of every choice you make. When life feels overwhelming and you're facing those long, sleepless nights where anxiety seems to have the loudest voice, have you ever noticed a subtle shift in the atmosphere around you? Not a dramatic change, but a gentle softening of the harsh edges of fear? Saint Teresa of Ávila knew this experience intimately, and she attributed it to the consoling presence of guardian angels who never abandon us in our darkest hours. In multiple passages throughout her book of her life, she describes how, in her most difficult spiritual and physical trials, she would sense a presence that brought comfort without words, strength without explanation. This angelic consolation doesn't necessarily remove your problems or answer all your questions. Teresa was clear about this in her writings. Angels don't always provide solutions, but they always provide company. She described feeling, even in her deepest spiritual dryness and physical suffering, that she was never truly alone. This wasn't a psychological coping mechanism or wishful thinking. It was a documented reality that she experienced so consistently that she came to depend on it as evidence of God's continuous care through His heavenly messengers. In your own home, during those difficult seasons when worry keeps you awake or grief feels too heavy to bear, you might notice this same gentle presence. Perhaps it's a sense of being held, even when no one is physically there. Maybe it's a subtle peace that descends just when your thoughts were spiraling into despair. It could be as simple as feeling less alone in your struggles, or as profound as experiencing an inexplicable hope that seems to come from beyond your own emotional resources. Teresa understood that this consoling presence was not meant to make us dependent on emotional experiences, but to remind us of spiritual realities that exist beyond our feelings. Angels console us not to keep us comfortable, but to give us strength for the journey ahead. Their presence whispers to our deepest fears. You are seen, you are loved, you are not abandoned. This consolation becomes a bridge between our human fragility and divine strength, allowing us to continue walking forward even when we cannot see the path clearly. Have you felt this presence in your most difficult moments? That gentle companionship might be the most intimate sign of angelic protection in your life. You've probably experienced those moments when everything seems to fall into place with a timing so perfect it takes your breath away. The job opportunity that came just when your savings ran out. The friend who called exactly when you needed encouragement. The solution that appeared right when you thought you were out of options. While the world might call these coincidences, Saint Teresa of Ávila recognized them as clear evidence of angelic orchestration. In her correspondence with various spiritual directors and in her administrative work founding new convents, she repeatedly documented instances of what she called divine timing, circumstances so perfectly arranged that they could only be attributed to heavenly intervention. Teresa understood that guardian angels have access to a perspective we cannot see. They observe the movements of grace across time and space, understanding how seemingly unrelated events can weave together for our highest good. In her letters about the founding of her Reformed Carmelite convents, she describes numerous occasions when needed resources, helpful people, or crucial permissions appeared at exactly the right moment, often through chains of events so complex that human planning could never have arranged them. In your own household, this divine timing might manifest as provisions that arrive just when you need them most. Not necessarily dramatic miracles, but perfectly timed solutions that address your real needs. Perhaps it's the neighbor who offers to help just when you're overwhelmed, the unexpected refund that covers an emergency expense, or the opportunity that opens just when you're ready for a new direction. Teresa would tell you that these are not random acts of fortune, but evidence of guardians who are working behind the scenes to coordinate circumstances for your benefit. What makes this timing so distinctive, according to Teresa's observations, is how it often involves elements completely outside your control. The angels work through people who don't even know they're being used as instruments of providence, through circumstances that align in ways no human coordinator could have managed. This type of provision requires you to develop what Teresa called the eyes of faith, the ability to recognize God's hand in the ordinary miracles of daily life. When you begin to notice these patterns of perfect timing in your life, you're seeing the fingerprints of angels who are actively working to demonstrate that you are deeply cared for by heaven itself. Have you noticed that certain homes feel different the moment you enter them? Not because of their decoration or cleanliness, but because of an intangible quality that makes you want to linger, to speak more softly, to be more thoughtful. Saint Teresa of Ávila understood this phenomenon as one of the most beautiful signs of angelic presence in a household. In her writings about the various convents she established, she frequently noted how spaces under angelic protection seemed to naturally invite prayer, reflection, and meaningful conversation, even among visitors who weren't particularly religious. Teresa observed that when angels watch over a home, they don't just protect the inhabitants, they transform the very atmosphere of the space. She wrote about how guests at her convents would often comment on feeling unusually peaceful or inspired during their visits, sometimes experiencing spiritual insights or making important life decisions while there. This wasn't due to anything she or her sisters were consciously doing. It was what she recognized as the sanctifying influence of angelic presence on the environment itself. In your own home, this might manifest as friends and family members feeling unusually comfortable there, staying longer than they planned, sharing more deeply than they usually would. People might tell you that your home feels like a refuge, a place where they can breathe more easily or think more clearly. Children might be calmer in your space, arguments might resolve more quickly, and difficult conversations might unfold with more grace and understanding than either party expected. This sacred hospitality isn't something you create through your own efforts, though your cooperation certainly matters. According to Teresa's understanding, it flows from the presence of beings who carry the peace of heaven within themselves and naturally share it with any space they inhabit. Your home becomes a small embassy of heaven, a place where the love and peace of the divine realm touches the ordinary world. When people feel drawn to return to your home, when they find themselves opening their hearts more easily within your walls, when they experience unexpected healing or clarity there, you might be witnessing the transformative power of angelic guardianship that extends beyond protection to actual sanctification of your living space. During those crucial moments when you're facing an important decision and you feel torn between different options, have you ever experienced a clarity that seemed to come from beyond your own reasoning? Not a voice or dramatic sign, but a deep knowing that guided you toward the choice that later proved to be exactly right? Saint Teresa of Ávila documented this type of supernatural discernment throughout her life, particularly during the complex negotiations and decisions involved in reforming the Carmelite order. In her Book of Foundations, she describes how, in moments of uncertainty, she would experience what she called divine illumination that helped her navigate even the most complicated situations. Teresa understood that guardian angels play a crucial role in helping us discern God's will, especially during times when our own emotions, fears, or desires might cloud our judgment. She wrote about experiencing a kind of spiritual clarity that would descend upon her during prayer, not as an emotional feeling, but as a clear understanding of which path would lead to the greatest good. This wasn't passive waiting for divine direction. It was an active collaboration between her human reasoning and angelic assistance in seeing situations from heaven's perspective. In your own life, this angelic guidance in decision-making might manifest as an inexplicable peace about choices that seem risky by worldly standards. or conversely, an uncomfortable restlessness about options that appear safe and logical but somehow don't feel right for your spirit. You might find yourself drawn to opportunities that challenge you to grow, or naturally steered away from situations that would compromise your values, even when you can't fully articulate why. What distinguishes this angelic discernment from mere intuition, according to Teresa's careful observations, is its consistency with divine love and its fruits of peace and spiritual growth. The guidance that comes through angelic assistance always leads toward greater love of God, love of others, and proper love of self. It never contradicts the teachings of faith or leads toward selfishness, fear, or harm to others. When you find yourself making decisions that surprise even you with their wisdom, choices that seem to come from a source of knowledge deeper than your conscious mind, you might be experiencing the gentle guidance of guardians who see the eternal implications of every path you might take. As you've journeyed through these signs of angelic protection, you might be realizing that what you once attributed to coincidence, intuition, or good fortune has actually been evidence of a love so profound and constant that it has surrounded you all along, often unrecognized but never absent. Saint Teresa of Ávila would tell you that recognizing these signs is not the end of the journey, but the beginning of a deeper relationship with the spiritual reality that encompasses your daily life. In the final sections of her Interior Castle, she describes how awareness of angelic presence can become a doorway to more intimate communion with God Himself. Teresa understood that angels are not ends in themselves, but messengers and servants of divine love. Their protection, guidance, and consolation are all expressions of God's own care for you, mediated through beings who never cease to contemplate the divine face. When you become aware of their presence in your home and life, you're being invited into a more conscious participation in the spiritual dimension that has always surrounded you. This awareness changes how you live, how you pray, and how you understand your own dignity as a beloved child of God. The transformation that comes from recognizing angelic protection is subtle but profound. You begin to live with greater reverence for the sacred nature of ordinary moments, greater gratitude for protection you're only beginning to recognize, and greater trust in a love that watches over you even when you're not watching back. Your home becomes not just a place where you sleep and eat, but a sanctuary where heaven and earth meet, where angels walk among your daily routines, blessing your coming and going with their invisible presence. Saint Teresa would want you to know that this awareness of angelic protection is itself a grace, a gift that draws you closer to the source of all protection and love. The peace you feel, the guidance you receive, the consolation in difficult times. All of these are invitations to trust more deeply, to love more freely, and to recognize that you are never, ever alone in this journey of life. Your guardian angels are not distant protectors, but intimate companions in your spiritual growth. And their greatest joy comes not from your gratitude for their service, but from witnessing your own journey toward the God